Hi, welcome to Frames of Mind. My name is Georgie. I'm your host. On the next installment, I am here interviewing Max Strand and Ben Cohen of Rockies, which is available to stream on digital platforms. How are you guys doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good. Good to be
Yeah,
talking.
doing
Yeah,
great. Thanks so much for talking with us.
yeah, I got the chance to watch your film on Friday and I really enjoyed it. And I really like this idea because, so in Rockies, we have Charlie and his friends. They spend a lot of time outside of Rockies, but then, like, as they go to college, they drift apart. And then after many years away, he comes back because his ex girlfriend had passed away. And there's like a lot of tension in the friend group. And I was really curious to start us off. Can you talk to me about like where this idea initially came from?
Yeah, sure. Max and I have been friends for a long time. We went to kindergarten together and have remained close since. So we grew up friends, and we used to kind of hang out in the parking lot where we said our script. And No, when I was in at school, I got the idea of writing this kind of in real time movie set in a parking lot, just to kind of keep budget down in a way. Um, but then, I graduated. I spent a lot of time producing work, and then reconnected with Max and told him about this idea. And when we sat down to look at it again, it wasn't just about like budget restriction or anything. It was about kind of reminiscing about this period in our life where we didn't want to like hang out under our parents' roof anymore, but didn't necessarily have our own space to host friends. So we would just kind of loiter around waiting for something to happen. And we wanted to make a movie about the conversations that happen in that time, like maybe the time before the event or after the event, when you're just kind of killing time and connecting with the people around you that you're close with.
Yeah, how about for you,
Yeah,
Max?
yeah. I would just say to add to everything Ben said, writing writing the script, I think was um, just great for Ben and I to reflect back on those times of when you are out of high school and in college and kind of in that transition period between childhood and adulthood. Yeah, so we're definitely hopeful that a lot of people on campus, right now would could relate to that idea of, how what it means to be that age and navigating adulthood and then also navigating your friendships from childhood and seeing how, you know, debating, what's important to you and how do you see your future and how are you going to also, maintain your footing with your friends from your hometown and stuff. So that was just it was just really it was cool to as the writers kind of reflect deeply back on that experience and yeah it was just like, that's kind of how it came to be.
Yeah, I love that. Like you said, I actually did relate to that a lot. Like, there's one scene in like the middle where the characters were like, "Why didn't you reach out?" Or I'm trying not to spoil it, but and
Yeah,
I would found that super relatable because like with my own like childhood friends, like you said, there would be like certain things I saw, and I'm like, "Oh, but like it'd be weird," or like, "Do I reach out?" Like, haven't seen them in so long, and I just think that that's like a very relatable thing that you guys like captured with this that I feel like I haven't seen like talked about too much. So I thought that was a pretty neat idea that you guys had.
yeah, definitely. I think everyone could kind of relate to that feeling of wanting of of procrastinating reaching out to somebody or feeling awkward or just not getting to the response right away and then it just kind of piles up and time goes by and then it's too late to say anything and then that kind of creates a bigger problem. So yeah, we it's definitely something we kind of were hoping people could relate to and hopefully everyone could everyone knows that feeling. Everyone I'm sure wants to get better at that feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a kind of a catch-22 because the only way to solve the problem is if you pick up the phone and get in touch with somebody or go and meet up with them. But the longer you wait to do that, the like kind of more weight's put on that, so it gets worse and worse and worse. So it's like if you let it get out of control, then it becomes almost overbearing.
yeah.
Yeah.
It gets like more awkward and like harder as time goes on, and then all of a sudden like years pass, and it's like, oh no. So,
And
Exactly.
and in terms of relationships with that age, I feel like that's such a big part of, when you're in high school, you see them all the time. You see your friends all the time. And as you get older, you realize that friendships take work and like you have to pick up the call and send that message or make that phone call. And this is kind of like that a little microcosm of that learning experience of what it means to be friends when you guys aren't next to each other every single day.
Yeah, yeah. I also think that like the a lot of what we're trying to explore in the movie, maybe it comes across, maybe it doesn't, is um this idea of like when you're young, you're just trying to like maximize your experiences and like you're, doing as much as you can with your friends, trying new things, and then eventually like that kind of time calms down and you start doing a little bit more introspection, self, evaluation of like who am I going to be moving forward. And I don't think these characters have like necessarily figured any of that out, but we want to like sprinkle into the script the idea that they're beginning to think about those things.
Yeah, I love that. And you kind of mentioned a quote that I wanted to bring up too. There's a quote one of the characters says like when you're I forget the exact like beginning of it when he's like when you're young, you talk about all the drugs that you want to try, and then you get older and you talk about the drugs that you have tried, and then like when you get into a relationship, you talk about all the restaurants you want to go to, and then later you talk about all the restaurants you've been to, and then after that someone asks, and then what happens? And then I don't know, that just kind of blew my mind. I was like, "Oh, I didn't like think about that." Like I wanted to ask you, like, where did that line kind of come from? Because I just really love that line.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's just like it was kind of just something I was noticing at the time in my life that we were like writing the script, like that kind of evolution, and maybe like we put in that we don't know what happens next, but based on our own uncertainty and insecurity about that, and I guess Max and I both have children now, so maybe that's part of what comes next. But yeah, it was definitely just kind of one of those observations, and it's something that we found. I think if you can just write sort of like specifically about what you're noticing, then a lot of times like those moments become more like universal and relatable to like the outside audience.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like you said, what comes next, and that's the Rockies part two. It's the kids when they're all grown up. And it's like sci-fi in the future. Um,
Yeah, they're just texting each other.
they're all on Zoom. I wanted to ask you guys also, like, what is a favorite frame from your film?
Oh, interesting. That's a good question. Um, I guess if I had to choose one frame, it could be maybe even the what's the poster of the movie now, which is just the guys sitting on the bench eating their sandwiches. Just because, I think it kind of encapsulates, almost a feeling of the movie of just kind of that in between time that we were going for, where it's just like the guys hanging out. And also just of course love it because it's the whole group together doing what they've been doing their entire lives, which is just, getting sandwiches, going to the baseball field and eating them. So yeah, it's like a little family photo.
I'd say when they all pile into the car at the end, just not to shoot. No, I spoiled it,
It's
but
okay.
I don't know. It's like this idea of kind of they've had their struggles to connect with each other, but they're gonna at least like try some more, see what happens next.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I really okay, so I'm gonna talk about the spoiler too. Like, I really did like that part at the end, like, cause it's like such like an everyday thing of like people getting into a car, but because of like the subject of the movie, it was like so moving. And that's what I love about movies is when you can like take something like seemingly ordinary and make it mean something like so much more, you know? So I wanted to ask you guys too, like, what were some initial film inspirations that made you want to get into filmmaking?
I mean, I'm constantly like revisiting this like ensemble cast coming of age type movie like Noah Baumbach's Kicking and Screaming, Barry Levinson's Diner, American Graffiti, George Lucas, even like like Dazed and Confused, Beautiful Girls. Like I just those movies are so like comforting for me to throw on for whatever reason. So those were inspirational to this movie specifically. But were you asking more generally like what made us interested in becoming filmmakers? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Max, you want to start? Because I was
Yeah.
it's a hard
Yeah, I mean,
question.
first off, like, just ditto to what Ben said. Like all those movies that he said were definitely super specific to, inspiring this movie. And I think for me, movies just always are what they are for a lot of people, what they were growing up, which is nice as like an escape, you know. Like I always remember going to the theater and just having, being somewhere else for 2 hours and then leaving inspired, you know. I guess that's the big thing, leaving inspired and wanting to create. So I guess now it's 20 years later, but I mean, one of the first R movies I saw in theaters that blew my mind was Gladiator, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
So I remember like leaving that movie theater and kind of being blown away. And then yeah, I don't know, like and I guess there's even movies like the original West Side Story, which I think kind of fit its way a little bit into Rockies a little bit with the kind of like the groups of guys.
Hmm.
I always remember watching that movie and feeling super inspired. Um, but I mean, the list goes on and on. But for some reason, Gladiator always sticks in my mind of like as one of like the more important theater experiences of my life.
Yeah, I love that. How about
Yeah,
you, Ben?
what you were saying about being moved by the end and like when something kind of mundane can happen in a movie, but it has this more like impactful emotional effect.
Yeah.
I think like for me, I at some point I realized like being happy isn't like feeling good; it's feeling like connected to the human experience, you know?
Mm,
So like I think movies made me feel like more connected to what was going on in the world than, you know, the small kind of town that we were in. And yeah, feeling really kind of invested in the character's story. And I remember when I got to school, so being on campus and watching Y Tu Mama Tambien one evening, and then going to hang out with my friends, and just feeling like I had this like secret because I just watched this like a movie that like made me feel so strongly, and I thought that that was just so cool to like, yeah, feel so like connected and strongly to a movie. And that, you know, that experience came after I'd already fallen in love with movies, but you're asking me today, and right now I remember that moment. So I'm gonna go with that answer.
yeah, and for me, like, favorite movie is a hard thing to answer. It's like there's any 10 at any given point, to be honest.
Yeah. And sometimes it like, so many like have no relation to Rockies, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Shrek is
Right.
one of my favorite movies of all time. So
I
Yes,
like to
it's like
say
always
okay.
like
in my
perfect for me,
list.
perfect. I like to just think of movies that are like perfect for me, perfect for everybody, like that one category.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's not like one, but there's just some that like, you know, hit that kind of I don't know, perfect chord.
Yeah, and it's like which movie can I remember the name of? That's my favorite in this moment. That's what happens
Yeah,
to me too.
exactly.
Max, you were mentioning the original West Side Story, but one of your actors was actually in the recent West Side Story. So I
Yeah.
was wondering if you guys could talk a bit about the casting process, working with your actors, because you guys have like a stacked cast with actors who were in like the Iron Claw, West Side Story, the Batman, the Penguin. What was it like working with this group of guys in making this film?
I think Ben and I keep coming back to the idea that we are just been so fortunate to have this cast be in our movie because they really just made our experience so much easier and so much better. You're referencing Ben Cook, who was in the new West Side Story. Um, but yeah, all the cast were just so incredibly talented and so incredibly prepared, which helped us in production so much. Making independent films, it's a whirlwind, and you have a plan, and the plan gets has to be changed all the time. And because of the preparedness and the talent of the actors, we were able to, adjust seamlessly and get everything done in time. So we were just, super lucky to have such a great and talented cast.
Yeah, I'd reached out to casting director Kate Geller, who I'd worked on a previous film with that I was producing, and Kate recommended that she bring Taylor Williams on board as well. And Taylor, this was her first movie, but she's since gone on to do like Good One, another film that I produced, Omni Loop. So she's doing more movies, but like she had been coming from the theater world in New York, so she knew a lot of like the up and coming like theater talent, and was
Mm,
able to put those performers like in front of us. And yeah, because of that we were introduced to these like amazing actors. And I think like with the legacy of the movie, would be in an ideal world is like these actors go on and do like a million amazing things, and then people will go, "Oh my God, they were all together in this movie at one point." Like, let me back and check it out, and hopefully they have
Yeah.
a decent time returning to this movie.
That is
Yeah,
so
and they all
cool.
got they were also they were all just besides being great actors, were all such kind people, and they got along with each other so well, which I think was super important to the chemistry on screen because they had great chemistry off screen for sure.
That makes a lot of sense. And like as a like direct writer directors of like an ensemble film like this, is that kind of an initial word you have about like the cast chemistry? Do you have a chemistry read for the whole group, or did they not meet until y'all came together on set? I don't know how that process.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you.
Some people had already known each other just being in that like theater world,
Gotcha.
and I remember like we got everybody together for like a barbecue. I think Max had COVID at the time,
Yeah,
so he
COVID.
Oh,
couldn't make it. But seeing them all together and how like well they just initially got along, I knew it was gonna be like a good thing. And then we headed up to upstate New York where we shot the film and all stayed in the same hotel, so everybody just became even like closer. And yeah, we were fortunate in that they were all like so generous with each other with their time to invest in getting close. And I think hopefully in the film it like translate that there's some kind of like language between them.
yeah, it definitely does. They have a lot of chemistry. I thought they were just like friend group in real life or something. Um, I, as we're wrapping up into our final minutes, I do really want to know because I love talking with directors. What is one of the like toughest challenges you faced as a director, and how did you like work through it? Because I you were talking about how you have to like improvise a lot. So is there any specific situation that you were like, oh, how is this gonna happen, and then you like made it work?
Do you
Another
want to
good
start,
question.
Max? We shot it during like COVID time, so that
Okay.
was like challenging to just like have to press pause for like a week at a time, and then all of a sudden we'd you know lose a cast member for like a week and have to shoot an entirely different schedule. So just being able to like think on the fly and like get into a totally different like head frame to shoot like a scene that we weren't expecting to do that day. I mean, it was possible because like the whole thing takes place in one location, but I think it was just like challenging to have to think so quickly on our feet. Luckily, as Max said, like the cast was super like prepared. So even when we threw them like a wild idea, like doing like a 5-page scene that was supposed to go next week, like day in like 2 hours, they could run with it.
Wow.
But yeah, that was definitely a challenge. And I think just like um you like forget about when you're in the moment, but now that it's been like, a little bit since we shot the film, um like each one of these movies that we do is such a learning like process. So like now I'm just trying to challenge myself to like instead of focusing on the result, I'm trying to learn as much as I possibly can, like in reflection on what happened during those like, like few weeks we were up on set and in the time since.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with what Ben said. I think for this project specifically, it was the time and being able to shift gears quickly when needed to. That was such a challenge. But yeah, we're definitely so thankful that we had the team around us that were able to, you know, take a beat and slow down in the chaos of it and refocus on the next scene and get everything done.
Yeah, that's incredible because, like, for me, just as like a journalist, when I don't do an interview for a couple weeks, I feel like I completely lose my mojo even after like a week. So I find that really impressive that you were able to like pause. Like, that's incredible. Like, congrats. Like, good job is what I'm trying to say.
Thank
Um,
you.
Well, in
yeah.
this interview, I've noticed your flow from like question to question is really like strong, and you make like nice connections, and it feels like a natural a
Yeah, for sure.
process. So I appreciate that. So I was gonna say that after we stopped recording, but I guess I jumped the gun.
Oh, thank you. Our listeners can't see, but like I'm blushing right now. I'm smiling. Um, um, and so my final question that I like to ask everybody, because my show is called Frames of Mind. So my final question is, what's on your mind? Is there anything you've been watching lately that you can't stop thinking about? Film or TV?
Oh, interesting.
For me, it's
Um,
Rockies.
Rockies.
I'm trying to think of like, I constantly have like I have a weird habit where like when I watch something that I really love, like I also like watch it like 5 or 6 times and get like
Yeah.
obsessed with it. So what's the last one that like hit me like that? I think I really liked After Sun, which was like maybe 2 years ago at this point. And yeah, I really enjoyed A Real Pain. I don't know if that movie's still out right now. I think people should go see it. And that movie, yeah, they were Jesse Eisenberg really like populated like the group that's on that trip in a really like intelligent way. I think that like the sum of the parts it ended up being like really meaningful and impactful, and I enjoyed that experience of watching that so much.
Yeah. Oh, if
Yeah,
you
the last movie I did watch was A Real Pain, so I also, thought it was incredibly well done. The last show I watched, which I did really enjoy, was Arcane. You ever see that
yes.
on Netflix? I was just like blown away by like the world building. That was like my big takeaway. Like, of course the story was great, but just the first few episodes just kind of getting lost in the world and the animation and like all the attention to details of the alleys and the streets and everything was pretty great. And that's usually I'm not a big that's a genre that I'm not that spent too much time in. So I watched it kind of like, okay, people have been talking about it, and then I kind of got sucked in.
Yeah, I love it when that happens. Well, thank you guys so much for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Take care.